today's video, we're going to be taking a look here at this modeled guidance. We have multiple storms that are going to make their way across the entire nation, so we need to talk about those storms. There's actually two of them. As a matter of fact, we might have a couple more popping up here on the models as well. Some big temperature changes as well on the way. We've been experiencing mostly cold temperatures here across the central and eastern United States. Basically since the beginning of March, and that is very different than things were in January and February. We are going to see a return to the warmer temperatures, it appears, here in the central and eastern United States, and perhaps a turn towards more wintry conditions out west. We obviously have a lot to talk about based on what I just said, so we're going to be watching for all of those things. As you can see, as we're just starting things out here, there is a storm system already in the middle of the nation there, as you can see. And we need to talk about this one because there is some snowfall involved here. As you can see, all the way from the southern Rockies up through the northern plains, we have this kind of stretching area of snowfall here. It is pretty clear to the trained eye. If we look in here, there's some pretty broad low pressure somewhere near eastern Kansas. There we have the center of low pressure. There's a cold front underneath and a bit of a warm front here taking place. It's interesting, there's two low systems here, and it looks like the warm front is mostly attached to this one, and then perhaps there's just a cold front stretching along all of these. Regardless, we have lots of warm air surging in northward, and tomorrow in the east we're going to have a lot of that surging northward, and then we see a lot of cold moving in behind all of this, indicating some cold front activity is taking place. Now, as we keep going with all of this, what we see is everything dives a little bit further south, intensifies. I like this frame because it's very, very easy to see here. We have a 990 millibar low pressure center there over the center of the lower peninsula of Michigan there. We see a very, very long cold front there, and then a very short warm front here. But we are going to see warm temperatures surging northward for the east tomorrow, looking like mostly 70s, depending on where you're at, maybe lower to mid to maybe even upper 60s, again depending on where you're at, and the further south you go, the more up into the 70s and perhaps even lower 80s as you reach down into Georgia, Florida, Alabama, Mississippi. That can't be ruled out, so definitely a warmer day overall, a much more spring-like day here on March 17th there. As you can see, as we just continue this on, this cold front does eventually reach the east coast, probably around 1-2 a.m. perhaps. Now, we can't rule out a thunderstorm here, especially in these kind of like heavier sections. I'll take a look at the southeast here where we can get a better view. Let's take a look at the southeast. It's kind of hard to find these sometimes. There we go. So what we usually look for to see if there's going to be thunderstorm activities are surface cape here. Now this is very, very minimal amounts. As we can see earlier on in the afternoon, or perhaps late evening, maybe 8 p.m. or so, we had elevated amounts here, maybe 100, 80, something like that. 80s, 90s, 100 in here. This is usually sufficient enough for thunderstorm activity to take place, but nothing much more than that. Very general, heavier showers, perhaps thunderstorms, usually very, very mild thunderstorms. And we see this reach as far northward as perhaps the eastern shore of Virginia there. Something like this is the area that we'd be watching overnight here for potential thunderstorm activity. We can see these blue pockets kind of just scattered about here. So we see a few of these, and we even see some over southern North Carolina there near the Outer Banks. So there is a couple pockets in here that would have some sufficient just materials to work with to become thunderstorms here, especially down there in Florida. We see this. This is just an interesting tool we use to see if thunderstorms are possible, but definitely I would not be surprised if we have a couple embedded within this line in this cold front, because it is a very intense one. We're going from 70s down into the 40s and 50s again. This is going to be a pretty violent switch, and usually when this happens we get some heavier showers, thunderstorms along that line. Certainly, just looking at the precipitation here, it does appear like that will be possible. Just a little interesting fact to take away there, and we can see we're left with a major trough in the east, basically something like this. So it's not the most major one in the world. And honestly, most of that Arctic air is still way up here. We don't see that dip down that much. We see kind of just slightly below normal temperatures work their way through into these areas. But what we see is some energy moving its way northward. This could be enough to pull the kind of just pull those temperatures, those warmer temperatures back up the coast here. So let's just see if that happens. And we do see some ridging taking place. And certainly once we see this storm moving across the nation, 996 here again, cold front warm front here. We would see warm surging temperatures here. Very, very cold and snowy out west, as you can see. No major snowstorms taking place at this point, but certainly snow showers pretty widespread. And we would be looking for another severe weather event underneath right here. Once more, so we see that warm front take place, cold front intensifying, and we see a very intense cold front there. This warm front is pretty intense too, but look, along warm fronts like this area here, we're usually watching for more showers, ice, and then snow eventually in the blues. It's this cold front here where we have this surging warm air right ahead of it, cold air hitting it from the side, rushing in. This is where you see that severe weather potential in between these areas right there. Now, that's by Friday the 24th. We see this reaches the East Coast right around 8 p.m., perhaps as late as about 10, 11 a.m. We'll take a look again here at our Cape because the East Coast usually has to wait pretty long in the year to start seeing thunderstorms. The ocean does make things a little bit more stable, but as you can see here, we see these Cape numbers elevated. So throughout states, even like Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee, and obviously down through Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia, they see them through the winter as well. But we do see some of these Cape values, especially in the more central regions of Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina there, elevating into the 1, 2, 3, 400s. This would definitely indicate that some thunderstorms could be firing up along that line. Usually you're looking for about 1,000 to see anything substantial as far as severe weather. So we are not looking at anything of that nature. It does not appear. Obviously, nothing can be ruled out, and you don't have to have 1,000 Cape to see severe weather. But usually, that's the number you're looking for very, very substantial high precipitation thunderstorms to occur. We don't have anything like that going on, but straight line winds cannot be ruled out, or even, in most cases, a brief tornado can't be ruled out either with these types of windy storms. Usually, these winter ones can feature things like that. So you never want to really put your guard down, if that makes sense. But we do have some values, again, pretty far up the East Coast, especially through central North Carolina, reaching close to that 100 mark. I would be watching again for another line of thunderstorms in these areas. And it does look like we're going to get another surge of this Cape back up the East Coast again as we're approaching April 1st. So we can tell that the thunderstorm activity is becoming more and more frequent. Right now, we're at about once a week. It's going to increase from there only, obviously, as we all know. Let's just kind of backtrack here. So we see that cold front come through, and then this is when we're left with a more zonal flow, which means that jet stream is basically just heading from west to east. There is no dips or ridges, as you can see, and this would bring seasonable weather for the time being here. That's around Sunday the 26th. We could see this persist or pretty much quickly move on. Only time would really be able to tell with something like that. Let's go ahead and take a look at that total precipitation. This tells the whole story. We see, again, some storms moving on toward the west here. And then we see them really firing up through a lot of the central United States. We see a lot of this going on. And when they do that, this is when they have the cold front underneath. And then it eventually reaches the East Coast. So that's what we see a lot of there. And the temperatures are warm out ahead of that cold front. Again, the cold front brings in the trough. We see that happen twice on this model run. And that's why we get a lot of precipitation in general for these areas I'm circling in here. Lots and lots of activity over the next 10 days. Total snowfall here, as you can see. Get this off my screen. I don't know why it's not doing that. There we go. We see plenty of snowfall out west here, as you can see, all the way down south of Texas into Mexico. We're seeing plenty of this snowfall. And then just to the north of where this low would be traveling across the east here, we're seeing snowfall potential in there, but nowhere south of that low. These areas seem to be much more mild and really not featuring much of any snowfall. And that's how it's been all winter. And really at this point in March, we're already at the 16th. That's how I do anticipate things will likely continue. Now, as we take a look here at the GFS model, I just want to walk our way through this. We do see that first cold front come through. Well, actually, since this is the most interesting thing to me, at least, we'll take another look here. Again, this model also with that first cold front features a heavy line of showers or thunderstorms. I do want to take a look at that Cape on this model as well. We actually have less here, but this is a lower definition model, so it might be there, just not really showing up. And I do see a little bit of elevated amounts, 50, 20, 18. This would not be quite as sufficient as the European model, though. I want to see with storm number 2 if we get any other events with high Cape here in the east. There's that second cold front coming through. Yeah, we get quite a bit there along the East Coast, actually. Mostly this kind of like southern corridor here.
This is kind of where you start to see palm trees along the coast, pretty much this point south. So this is kind of your I don't even know what you'd call it. This is where things get a little bit more tropical along the southeast coast, Georgia, South Carolina, and then the southern half of North Carolina. If you're familiar with the East Coast, you might agree there. We do get another cold front here on this GFS model where, look at that, pretty high Cape amounts are able to work their way into the mid-Atlantic here. So a lot of folks might see their first thunderstorms here before we work our way even into April. We get another higher Cape event here in these areas in general on this GFS model. And then we're pretty much done with that. So we see 2 there on the European model, and then perhaps 3 or 4 here on this GFS model. Certainly looking like things are going to be looking a lot more like spring, which excites me. I don't know about you guys, but we get multiple storms of that same nature. We're seeing these move up to the north, just like this, and then cold front underneath. That's the third one or so here. And then we kind of get the same thing here on this GFS model. Very strong low up there in southern Canada. Cold front underneath. That's what brings these potential thunderstorms over and over and over again. Very, very interesting pattern this model suggests. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. We're going to continue to update you guys on all these things every single day. So be sure to subscribe. Be sure to also hit that bell icon for daily notifications when we upload so you never miss one. Like the video if you did enjoy it. Leave a comment down below, and I will see you guys in the next video.